Welcome to the CyberGov Podcast, where you'll learn how to build a cybersecurity strategy that will help you earn more revenue across your government contracting business. Alrighty, welcome back to the CyberGov Podcast. Today, a special guest here, Milica. I'm excited to have you on the show today. And I don't know if I do any justice introducing you because there are so many things that you do and have accomplished. So if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It is a pleasure. As you said, my name is Milica, and I am a co-founder of a small cybersecurity firm, KyberStorm. What we do is really focus our efforts into enabling mostly government contractors, smaller to medium-sized organizations that are looking to get into the federal space, but they need to have specific cybersecurity and compliance requirements. When it comes to me, I have been in this field for over 13 years, and I'm really right now grown into an expert of regulatory compliance when it comes to FedRAMP, FISMA, CMMC, like all the alphabet that you can imagine in the compliance world. So I bring all those expertise to my customers, and we try to build information security programs that are sustainable, but they're also like small enough for them that they can take a bite of that, really, but then be able to build on top of it. So I think that's really important. Like, not overwhelm yourself with too much stuff, but still build a good foundation. Then you can now catch all of these avalanche of cybersecurity and compliance requirements that come your way.
Awesome. That is quite a few, because you mentioned FISMA, CMMC, all these different regulatory compliance issues that small and medium-sized businesses may face. Now, I'm curious about how you got started in just the compliance world. And the reason I'm asking that question is because compliance, similar like auditing, and it depends on what side of the fence you're on, really.
Yeah.
You could be on the auditing side, or you could be on the side to help people out. How did you get started in this particular field?
So I was working for a government contractor, and we were supporting two different agencies from respect of like auditing them actually for cybersecurity compliance requirements. And that's how I started. We were supporting CMS, FSA, EPA. So those are some of the agencies, and each one of them had something unique about like what they had to follow, right? But there was always like a common denominator that you can see across different frameworks that they used. And so I started as an assessor and grew into more of an advisor and a SME. Yeah.
Which one do you like best?
Ooh, advisory. Yeah. So much more fun. I mean, assessing is like, some will say like going through a checklist, which it can be, but it gets pretty boring. When we talk about advisory, you really are solving a problem versus trying to catch someone into what they've done wrong.
Absolutely. I'd have to agree with you on that. I do love the advisory piece because you actually have a conversation and you get to help folks. That's kind of the real feeling that I get there after working on these types of projects. You really get to help someone and further them along rather than just finding out, did you do this? If you didn't do this, are you doing this? Are you planning on doing this?
Exactly. It's a one-way conversation, right? You've done it or you haven't done it.
Absolutely. So speaking about those regulatory different compliance pieces that are out there, now there's quite a few for the government. There's quite a few. And not only for the government, but specific industries have their own compliance, right? Like PCI DSS, which would be payment card industry, data security standards. So if you're dealing with point of sale devices, you'd have your own compliance there. Now, I know you all deal with a few. What are some of the major ones that you all deal with?
So yeah, just like you mentioned, every industry is going to bring something specific to them, right? What we typically see if you're working with a government, it's going to be NIST-based compliance, and that's going to be like your FedRAMP, and that's for cloud service offerings, right? If you have a software in a cloud, hosted in a cloud, or a platform, then you're going to need FedRAMP. And that's for civilian agencies. If you're looking to work with the DoD, now you need something called FedRAMP Plus, which is really DoD requirements that are added on top of the FedRAMP requirements. Then you have FISMA if the system is hosted on the federal government systems, right? Like if you have a product that's hosted on federal government systems, that's FISMA. Then we have CMMC, which is pretty hot topic right now. It is for all the defense subcontractors or contractors. They need to comply with CMMC, and there are 3 different levels depending on the information you're hosting. If we're going deeper in and we're looking at like some of the like specific agencies, then you're going to see some other stuff. Like if we're talking about like supporting HHS, you're most likely going to be dealing with HIPAA, with high trust, with MARSI, with CMS, ARS, and then you go deeper and deeper, right? But what we do is try to help organizations set up their information system programs that will support these requirements when they come in play. And you start small, right? Like you're starting with something that's smaller and something that's sustainable. So like whether you start with NIST RMF, which is the risk management framework that you want to implement in your organization, or you're looking at NIST CSF, so cybersecurity framework, that's also really good for smaller organizations. So those are the kind of areas that we look and focus on and try to build that foundation for a cybersecurity program.
You cover quite a bit there, from FISMA to CMMC to HIPAA.
And it's just the start. Like that's just the start.
That's a lot, right?
No.
But what if I'm a government contractor and I'm just starting my business? I'm just starting a government contracting business. And I got a couple questions for you, Milica. Do I need a framework? So you talked about the NIST cybersecurity framework, the risk management framework. Do I need a framework?
You don't necessarily need it, but it's easier to implement because a framework gives you really the point from a point A to point Z, to get somewhere, how to build the governance within your organization. So you have the systems, the processes, the documentation, the people, right, in right places. It really helps. It gives you, that's the foundational thing. It's a framework, right? Something versus you trying to figure out what will work, hitting it and see if it sticks. But so it's much better. And I think it's more calculated way, more strategic way to get to the end point. Yeah.
I like that. I really like that because it gives you a roadmap. Someplace to look at, okay, I can go in this specific direction rather than just saying, I'm a government contractor. I know I need some cybersecurity and I'll dream it up myself or ask friends and family or some advisory, like what should I do? So that framework will give you a roadmap. I really like that portion. Really like that. Second question I got for you. Let's say I'm a government contractor and you just said quite a few things from different frameworks, all this stuff. I'm trying to figure out, where do I start? Where can I start it?
Right. It can be very overwhelming. Of course, there's like so many things that are like flying into your face and be like, okay, what actually makes sense for us? Mm-hmm. I would say you start from like looking at what services do you provide? Do you have a product? What kind of data are you hosting? Like, who are your targets? Which agency are you targeting, right? How is this going to work? Are you going to be, providing actual services? Maybe you're hosting some of the data inside of your systems. So that's really comes down to the information, to the data of the federal government and how that data is protected. And then based on that, then you're going to understand, okay, if I'm working with the defense agencies, and maybe I just have information about the contract. Okay, do I still need something? Well, yes, most likely you're going to need CMMC level 1 because now you have federal contract information in there. But if we're talking about, I'm a product in a cloud and I'm hosting some of the data, but actually I'm in AWS. So do I still need something? Yes, you do. Right. So you still need FedRAMP because there is a shared responsibility model in cloud, and then there's your responsibility. You have to implement certain controls, right?
Awesome. I really like that. And that was a great explanation. Thank you, by the way. So if you are just starting your government contracting business, or you could be in the throes of it already and kind of getting overwhelmed and trying to figure out your way. We've talked about frameworks already. We've also talked about, like, if I'm just starting, there was one word that kept coming up in that conversation that you said multiple times: data. And
Mhm.
that was the driving factor. Where is the data stored? Where is the data going to be stored? Is that in the cloud? What am I doing with the data? All of those things can help to drive your controls, the level of CMMC that you're going to have. All that will help to drive your path down the roadmap with that framework as well. So thank you so much for providing that, because that helped to put things together that if I'm a government contractor that's just starting out, I need to think about my data.
Yeah.
Secondly, a framework can help me kind of move in that direction without just dreaming up some sort of way that I'm going to protect my environment and protect the government's data. So thank you for that. The other thing I really want to ask you is, now, all of these things that we've been talking about, from frameworks to figuring out the data to implementing these things, different security controls are going to cost money. They're not free.
Yes.
And either the implementation or the digital transformation, meaning what I'm running right now just cannot do what I needed to do to get me to the point of being compliant. So, a term I used to use all the time, look, how can I ball on a budget? How can I be balling on a budget, right? What can I
Yeah.
do to get me compliant that is not breaking the bank and my pockets at the same time? Because I'm just starting my business, or I'm a government contractor, and implementing this is going to cost me something. It may cost you a little, it may cost you a lot. it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
going to cost you though. So what
Certainly.
are some strategies I can do there?
Sure, yeah, there are a few strategies you can use. And again, it depends which framework you're going after. But in a nutshell, we've noticed that like if you're a very small company and you don't have expertise in a house, it's going to cost you a lot of money to find those experts and hire them and and have them on staff. So in that specific case, I think you're better off going with like an MSP, someone that
Mm,
can help you out. And there are so many out there now that I'm sure you can have some competitive, advantage by like finding someone smaller, someone that maybe is just starting off, or maybe even like, maybe have been in a business for a little bit. So they will give you like competitive pricing,
mhm.
but still provide really good services. So that's one thing. Another thing is like when it comes to compliance, there's a lot of documentation burden, right? So MSPs are
Yes.
not going to, they're not going to do that for you. So you can either hire a third party to do it, which is going to be a more expensive way. You can have someone internally do it, which again, you would have to hire people to do that. Or you can find templates that are already pre-designed, pre-developed, that are targeting specifically what you're looking for. And I think that's probably the cheapest option. You still have to like maybe, change a little bit to make sure it fits what your need, fits your organization. But typically they're done in a way that like if you take them and you run with them, you just, put a little bit of information about your system and your different systems in your company, you should be good to go. So that's an easier and better way. When it comes to technology, that's a big one, right? Because there's going to be a
Mhm.
lot of things that you're going to have to now implement, maybe buy some tools, right? You can always leverage open source tools, right? They're available that are mostly free. Some you might have to pay for training or stuff like that. Maybe it's some licenses, but typically they're it was more budget friendly than some brand names, right? So
Absolutely.
those are definitely some of the ways that we see that our customers are saving money by doing some of these things. Yeah.
For sure. For sure. Thank you for listing those out, because at the top of the list, an MSP. That is probably one of the number one things that you can look at. Who can I get to do this versus trying to figure it out, stumbling through it, staying up at night. I had to take my own advice on some of those things, like who can I find to do this rather than trying to do all of it myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is probably one of the major things there, finding a good MSP that can help you implement these things and is almost like an advisor also, that can kind of talk you through some of the implementation, just to tell you what they're doing, how they're doing it, and why they're doing it. Unless you don't really care. You're like, get this thing done. This is what I'm I got to focus on these other things.
Yeah. I mean, Of course, there are so many different ones. So you'll find everything out there. It's available.
Hmm.
Another thing I forgot to mention, depending again, if you're going with like something more stringent like FedRAMP and you're trying to build your own environment, that's like a totally different beast. And in that specific case, like you're really dealing with a lot of different moving pieces, right? Where you have to buy a lot of new technology to ensure that it is compliant. You're looking for an underlying provider, which is, a larger CSP that can give you the services you're looking for. In that specific case, I would say if you're trying to get there faster versus save money, then I would say outsource as much as you can. But if you're trying to save money, you got to understand that it's going to take you longer to implement everything internally with your team, but then you will be saving money, and then you will have to manage all the tools that you purchase and all the people that you have on staff. Yeah.
I like those different options.
Yeah.
Hey, if money is an object, you can try to get things done, just outsource all of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
But otherwise, it's going to take you a little bit longer. And what I'm hearing from you also, as it relates to this, whether you spend a lot of money to outsource all of that, or you take your time, it is an investment. It is truly an investment to your business to look at that from a government contracting perspective. And the reason I say investment is because I've said this a couple of times on a few other episodes. A lot of us look at cyber as a cost center, like it's just costing me money, rather than this is building an avenue for you to help achieve your business goals. So as a government contractor, if my business goal is to maybe secure 2 or 3 contracts over 2 years, if the request for proposal calls for me to be CMMC level 1 and I am not there, and this aligns to my business goal, then I need to invest that type of money to these resources so I can get to and accomplish my business goals. So mention what I'm hearing from you is the investment there. You got to invest.
Yeah, you have to invest. I mean, it's otherwise you're just going to be left behind, unfortunately, because these requirements are now coming into the contracts, and if you don't have it, you're disqualified. That's it.
Absolutely. Even I was thinking about the other day, I was having a conversation and we were talking about not only is, as it relates to CMMC, not only is that coming into the contracts to say you need to be compliant, but from a prime and subcontractor relationship, there's nothing that is stopping the prime right now. If you're a subcontractor, there's nothing that's stopping them from saying you need to be compliant. Even though they're not compliant right now, they could absolutely say you need to be compliant within the next 2 to 6 months or something like that. So that's a possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've noticed in the past many years that your vendor is your highest risk, really. Like the security breaches come from vendors. At least the last few have come, and you can see it. Like if everybody that's using, let's say, SolarWinds, have been affected by the breach. So you got to really be thinking risk, put your risk hat on, and be like, okay, like I need to understand who I'm doing business with, right? And then evaluate, okay, how I'm going to be affected if these people are not secure, they're not securing their end, where I'm securing my systems and my data, but I'm giving them a key to the kingdom by having MSP coming in and doing their work, right?
Absolutely.
Or having a SOC team that's doing continuous monitoring. Like, okay, I'm giving them the keys to the kingdom. How am I ensuring that this company is secure? Like, I want to see what they've done, right? So you have to send those requirements further down the line, really, in order to have the full circle like close, right?
And it's making me think about, as soon as you mentioned that, it's making me think about something. So I think we kind of mentioned this. I may have mentioned this on another episode, but as you're talking about this in vendors and doing work with vendors or other businesses, is there any appetite, or do you believe that we should create something or a template or something like that for government contractors that are going to team with other government contractors? And the reason I'm asking that is because we've really been talking about it in this space from the government to the government contractor, that particular relationship, right? So if I'm putting this in a contract, you need to be compliant with X. What about if we are teaming with another company and going after some work? Is there any, do you think we should be asking that particular company, hey, where are you in your CMMC journey? Or do you have a SOC audit or all of those things? Thoughts around that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, I mean, if you're teaming with someone, they are kind of representing you, right? Like you guys are working together, you're going after the same deal. That means the government is going to be looking at both of the companies. You can say, we're the front, right? We have a team that's going to come in. But for your own like security and your own like doing your own due diligence, you should still check and see what the teaming partner has done, like what security they have in place.
Absolutely. Got to follow up with that. They say you got to be careful who you get into business with. You just never know. Skeletons could come out the closet there. You have no idea that this business could have been in a major cyber incident and it just wasn't disclosed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you definitely got to be careful there.
And that's what typically happens. I was just talking to someone recently and they said, oh, there haven't been any ransomware attacks recently. And I'm like, depends who you ask. Like, yeah. I know some companies that have been through ransomware twice in 1 year. And I know, but that was not in the news. So no one will hear that, you know. So things are happening.
Yeah, they are happening. And I was teaching a class not too long ago, and we were talking about very similar to what you're saying. Those things are happening, and sometimes they're just being hidden in other news. So it depends on when they're also announced. Maybe a company has announced that they were hit by some ransomware on a late Friday afternoon. Mm-hmm. Perfect timing. Perfect timing for people to not pay attention to what's happening, right? Because they're ready for the weekend. So those types of things may have a pretty good, sorry, not pretty good, but a major impact on other businesses. Now, another question I got. So if you are working with a company and you all are teamed up together and you've asked them about their CMMC journey and they tell you they have had an incident, a recent incident, and I'm just curious, would that prevent you from doing work with them?
No, absolutely not. No, actually going to help us. I mean, almost everyone has a security incidents. Whether they escalate to be a breach, that's a different story. But that gives me like, first thing I would like to understand once they say they had an incident, I want to know how they handled it. What happened? Do they have lessons learned? What have they learned from this? And then from there, I can understand really what the maturity of that organization is and where's the gap? Where do we need to help them? Do they even have a process or not? Right? I mean, there's like a lot of it that says about a company when something like that happens.
Why is that so important to understand how they handled it?
So, well, I mean, that means like, okay, they understand, first of all, how to respond to this security incident. They understand what is involved. They have, let's say, a visibility in their system, whether they caught it right away. That means that they have continuous monitoring in place. They're doing some auditing and monitoring. If they caught it then, if that's something that escalated in security breach, which they haven't caught because they're not doing their due diligence at securing the environment, or maybe don't have any practices in place, it says a lot really about the company. And then if they had a breach, then okay, what are the steps that you took afterwards? Did you hire a third party to come in and maybe do some investigation, some root cause analysis, what really happened? Do you have an internal team that does that? Let it happen. Most likely you don't have a solid team, So a lot of these things can be said from that one event.
Awesome. I really like how you answered it. I really do. The reason I'm saying that is because it made me think about not just cybersecurity, but life in general, right? A lot of people say it's not really what happens to you. It is how you handle what has happened to or for you. It's how you recover, how you handle those things can kind of predict the direction of where things are going. Yeah. Same with cybersecurity, right? So, if you have or Maybe you didn't have an incident response policy. Maybe you have one now. Some things what you mentioned, the things that you may have learned from this. How did you respond to this? What are you going to do differently? So I really like how you answered that question and it was so fast when I said, would that deter you from working with them? Immediately you said no.
No.
Very, very quickly. And you started to go into lessons learned, things like that. And you also highlighted, you know what, at some point, each company is going to have an incident or be targeted, and maybe being targeted right now.
You're constantly being targeted. We get phishing emails all the time. They're just like, not one day that passes that we don't have a phishing email. It's just and they're just getting more and more sophisticated. Now with the AI, there's AI that's involved that's using even more sophisticated phishing emails, where you can't even recognize that's not a legit email, right? How do you stay ahead of that? Like that's another problem, right? Where you have to start looking in not only in the business, but in life in general. Like you may be getting something, like deep fakes, right? That can be used against you in personal life. Not even to talk about business. So all of these things are just getting more and more sophisticated, and we need to get more and more smarter. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really kind of morphing into, even though you may be doing something at work, this will help you to identify things in your business as well as in your personal life.
Transferable, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, those transferable skills, being able to identify them in both areas.
Yeah, we need to get smarter because
absolutely
AI is so smart. So it's getting very smart.
It's moving fast, very fast. So I think I got one more question for you, Milica. One more question, and that question is: I'm a big proponent of wellness, health and wellness, mental wellness, and I'm curious what you do to prevent any burnout or prevent stress that could be paralyzing for you.
That's a great question. So my big thing is meditation and being in a nature. So I'm trying to meditate every day. Sometimes I do it for an hour. Sometimes I don't have that much time, so I do it for 10 minutes, and that's just enough to reset you. And I also do once a year, I do this meditation retreat where I go and I retrieve from my own life for about 7 days, where I'm not talking to anyone.
I like that.
That's amazing. Yeah. And then, when the stress is overwhelming, the nature is my number one place to go. Hug a tree. I'm a hugger. So if you see someone hugging a tree, it's probably me. So yeah, that's how I reset myself and try to ground myself and get some of that energy out of me into the ground.
I really love that. That's probably my favorite question to ask anybody, because I get to learn different things that individuals do. How did you get into meditation?
So I read a book about 6 years ago. It's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza, where he explains how by 35, we're pretty much ran by programs. And so all the internal programs that we have. So we're really not conscious at all. 5% of it, any decision we make is, made consciously. Everything else is driven by programs. In order for you to break out of those programs, the only way to do it is through meditation. And so I started doing his work, and now it's the year 2025. It's been about 6-7 years I've been doing meditation, and I strictly do his meditations, but any meditation is good, I think.
That's awesome. I got to check it out. Now I got to check out that book. That's going to be on my list.
I think everyone should. Yeah.
I'm excited about that now. Now I'm really excited. Well, I wanted to thank you for taking the time today to talk about GRC, to talk about CMMC, all of these different alphabets, but also to talk about how an organization could start to build a program with little to no money. Everybody doesn't have as much money as some other companies have out there. So taking a look at an MSP, taking a slow journey to get to where they need to get to. I really appreciate you taking the time today. Now, for our listeners, where can they find you?
So they can find KyberStorm at kyberstorm.com. We're also on LinkedIn. We're also have my little YouTube channel that I started talking about the regulatory compliance. It's called Sip and Secure. And right now we are in the phase of talking about FedRAMP, but we're going to be adding other stuff as well. So I think it's a really good resource if you're trying to understand what each one of those frameworks are requiring. And I'm going in depth of like what's really needed and how to implement certain things. So I think it's a good resource for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Check out KyberStorm on LinkedIn. Check out Milica on LinkedIn. Check out her YouTube channel. She's talking about great information. All this information here, awesome. And I mean, especially book. I'm excited about that. So again, thank you so much. I appreciate your time today. Thank you for tuning in to the CyberGov Podcast, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you.
Come listen to us on YouTube, LinkedIn, or your favorite podcasting app.